Hey everybody, Daniel Rubino here at WPCentral, and today we're going to be talking about Windows Phone with Kevin Shields from Nokia, Joe Belfiore, of course, from Microsoft. Everybody knows who he is from both sites. And we'll be asking some questions. Hopefully we'll get some good answers. We'll try not to ask too tough questions, but I guess we can start off. First of all, let's just talk about the Lumia 900, the big announcement. Of course, this is yesterday's big thing. You want to talk a little about 900, what this means for the U.S. market?
We're super excited about what it means for Nokia in the U.S. market. You know, as I said yesterday in the press conference, we really conceived this product for the U.S. market, you know, we think that it's combination, it's balance between a great battery with LTE and a beautiful screen with our clear black display. We think it's going to make a difference, and the feedback we're getting on it has just been a little bit, pinch me.
Right. Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
So we're very optimistic, and now it's up to us to execute. We're close, and just to get it out across the finish line and get it out there and get it into people's hands.
Which I guess leads me to my first question. Now you said this phone was primarily designed for the U.S., and we're getting a lot of people asking us, what about the rest of the world for this device? I know you probably can't announce anything today, but do you have plans to possibly roll this out into global markets, or?
Right, so we wouldn't talk about future possibilities.
Okay.
But what I could tell you is that, to some extent, the U.S. market is starting to lead a lot of the markets around the world.
Okay.
So just because a product was, really conceived with respect to the United States does not mean that it's not appropriate.
Right.
Elsewhere. In fact, in a way, you almost were sort of kind of saying, hey, this is a great product.
Gotcha.
So it's not like we said, oh, we'll only have this in the United States, but that was the focus on the development of the product in the first place.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going to be a really big phone for AT&T. We're getting a lot of positive feedback as well, especially I think everybody really likes the cyan color one. It's a really big eye-catching device here. Yeah, really good. I guess some of the questions we have, well, we can ask you about some Microsoft questions here. We have a lot of gaming questions coming up with, of course, Xbox, and some of the questions have been, we're going to be able to purchase apps with Microsoft points.
There are a lot of feature requests that we get from our enthusiast community and from people in general, and being able to buy apps and games with points is one. That would be something we may do in a future release, and we're not going to talk about stuff that's coming in future software. But definitely people should keep the requests coming. We're listening, we're open-minded, and I bet your readers in particular have seen our suggestion box off our website, so definitely keep putting those in. Vote up the ones that you guys care most about. We're paying attention.
In fact, now there's an app.
Keep cranking away. And that's right, now there's an app. That's right.
Very good. Currently, Mango doing very well. The press seems to have been very pleased with it. How have you guys been feeling about the Mango release? It must be pretty gratifying after Nodo had a little trips, but I mean, still Nodo was a pretty solid update. But Mango became really huge. What challenges do you guys see for 2012 going in there with?
I think when we first launched Windows Phone, I think the main feeling that we had was we're doing this thing where we're going to try to introduce this new idea into the industry and the world. And in order to get it out when we did, we had to sort of get more vertical and do less breadth. So for example, when we launched, we weren't in Asia at all. I'd say where we are now is we're trying to deepen those things that we do well and add breadth. And so Mango, I think, was significant because we primarily caught up to the competition, added important stuff like multitasking. We're getting the app marketplace really filled out, and I think what you're seeing now, and the Lumia 900 is a perfect example of this, is adding breadth to the lineup of phones that are in the market. And you take this as an example. You've got the great Nokia quality and craftsmanship, elegance, beauty, now with a larger screen, now with a front-facing camera, some terrific optics in the camera. It's a great addition to the lineup of Windows phones we have, and it's super important because it's going to be in the United States. So what I'd say is, with Mango, we're filling in those gaps and we're adding breadth and so on. And 2012 I expect to be a very exciting year with more of that kind of stuff happening. And then, of course, later on with the launch of Windows 8, adding another jolt of energy and awareness to Metro and the Live Tiles interface. And hopefully that'll energize not just users but app developers as well.
How does it feel to actually be leading the way from Microsoft in the consumer space and the interface space? It's almost like they're falling behind you now.
There's a community of people at Microsoft that have, I think for a long time, really been focused on design and value design, different product groups. I spent a lot of time, I worked in the Windows group, I worked on Media Center, I worked on Zoom, and there's a number of people who I think have similar thoughts about this. And when Windows Phone sort of crystallized this Metro interface, it was not that big a jump for the Windows team or for the Xbox team to sort of embrace it and go with it. So it's definitely been nice. I think it's good for the company, and it'll be a positive thing for consumers too.
I guess I could put the same question for you guys at Nokia. What are your expectations / biggest challenges you think you face here coming to the United States? Because Nokia, of course, is huge worldwide. Every time I mention it to a lot of people who are from Europe and everything, you guys are just synonymous with quality of phones. But in the United States, you have a little catching up to do. But still, everybody still knows Nokia. So what do you guys see as your biggest challenge trying to get your phones recognized and get the attention they deserve?
Well, there's two interesting things that are happening. One is the brand is still recognized, and it's actually generally thought of reasonably positive.
Oh yeah.
It's just sort of a distant.
It's got a huge fan base.
Yeah.
Right. People really you get a positive reaction. Sort of like, oh yeah, I remember. Nokia, I used to love that phone, which is that's an asset, right? At least you come in, on a positive note. And then the other thing is that the ecosystem, in particular with the mobile operators, I think they're really eager to see us back in the game. We've been a value partner in the past. We've done great products with them. So there's a real willingness to partner with us, which is a great asset. And beyond that, what I'd tell you is that with the Lumia 800 and the 710, the feedback we're getting now from consumers has just been spectacular. Right? It's really a great product. And so you start from this basis of, okay, now we just need to let people know there's a better way.
Sure.
And the U.S. market is, on the one hand, a mature market. There's established players, iPhone, Android, and awareness. On the other hand, that there's sort of one of the good news things about that is that you have a lot of consumers that have an expectation about what they can get done with a smartphone. And there's this real opportunity, I think, to let them know, hey, there's actually a better way to get what you're trying to get done. It's done. Life a way that works really well for you. So you have that as an asset. On the other hand, it's not like there's a huge significant portion of this market that's using phones that are not using smartphones. Right? Those people are coming. And I would argue that Windows Phone is really a great platform for something that's new to the smartphone game, in addition to people who are established. And
you guys see the 710 as really that sort of jumping point for people, as far as for people who have flip phones right now going into smartphones, since it's going on spec-wise, it's actually up there with a lot of other Windows phones, but as far as price-wise and on T-Mobile, it's actually a great value. So do you see, these phones, you have different levels of 710, 800, 900, sort of different entry points for people?
Yeah, although what I tell you is that I think the phones sort of offer different richness and functionality, as you go up the price band. But in a way, I wouldn't necessarily say the 710 is any more appropriate for someone new to smartphones as another one would be.
Sure.
There's clearly a price issue, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But these products they sort of offer different things, all of which could be attractive to folks coming new to the party, or for that matter, people that are like, hey, there really is a better way.
Let's talk about the design process a little bit of the 900. So this phone, it was rumored for quite a few months now. We've heard, iterations and talks of that this phone existed. But how long does it take for you guys to actually go from a concept to what I have in my hands now? Because these are kind of issues that, as consumers, we just get the phone and that. But what's actually the process behind that? Because for all we know, it's 2 months or 6 months. It's kind of interesting because I imagine you guys take your time with things, but obviously you're in a rush to market as well. So.
Well, it's more than 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
It's less than 2 years. That's
right.
There. Honestly, it does actually vary a little bit depending on how much you want to push the envelope. With products like the Lumia 900 and really the Lumia 800 and 9 before that, there's a reason we refer to it as extreme product making. I mean, it's pretty you're on the bleeding edge of not really possible here.
Yeah.
Borderline science fiction.
It really is, and in fact, at one point in the script, I was saying something like, "It's a manufacturing miracle." I thought I'd drop that because the thing is you can go and hand build something like this, but when you try to go do it at mass volumes, it gets really tricky. So this kind of product, takes longer. And you build it, and it's not quite right. So you iterate on it, and it's not quite right. And so you build in a schedule where you can go and make an iteration, another iteration, another iteration, and then there's other products where you take less risk. And you can shorten your cycle, your time to market, and deliver a different benefit from having done that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like the 710, for instance, it's more of a traditional cell phone.
Right, a little bit less, taking a risk.
Right. Yeah.
And yet, in a way, with the replaceable covers in the 710, we just chose, hey, here's a way to innovate in the design.
Right.
It's not quite as, frankly, as difficult and risky as something like this, but still delivers really interesting, consumer value.
Right.
So you're just sort of choosing time versus the difficulty of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, especially with the 710. I like these color backs. I think are an excellent addition. It gives people that wide variety. So with the 900, I don't know if you guys can talk about this, but we'll see. Was it your concept first, or did AT&T approach you, or is it a little bit of both, where you guys kind of worked out something? I mean, how did these devices, I know you can't talk about other devices in the works right now, but how does that whole process start?
Well, there's definitely iteration, and I'd say that generally it's the case that we take the first step. So we'll sit down early with a partner like AT&T to say, hey, here's kind of what we have in mind. What do you think? And kind of get some feedback. And is this interesting? And then make adjustments from there. And same with Microsoft. These guys are seeing pretty early stuff from us.
Right.
And we're iterating together because they're saying, hey, you should do it this way, and we're saying we should do the software that way. Try to have the two things work really well.
But you're happy to let the other one do what they do best, right? Like Microsoft, best software, Nokia, best hardware, AT&T.
Actually, I think our partnership really actually works very well in that way. You heard Stephen Elop yesterday say, hey, the ecosystem is the important thing, and he was representing Nokia's point of view that they want to work with us together to build a thing that offers real differentiated value compared to Android phones or compared to the iPhone. And that's really the focus. And so it puts us in a position to, these guys are giving us feedback and opinions and collaborating on software, but we're driving that. We try to create a platform that intentionally allows them and others to add specific differentiated software value, which these guys are doing a ton of. And then we have a lot of conversations about hardware. What's the right spec? Which parts should we choose together to both go invest the optimization time to make them ensure that what you get when you buy it is that same buttery smooth, elegant, reliable experience that I think is one of the things that Windows Phone users love about the platform today.
There's also a life cycle factor now, because someone will go and see a beautiful Nokia phone and buy it and take it home, but then it's still your job to make them enjoy it a month later, 6 months later, 9 months later, and that seems to be where the ecosystem is most valuable now.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think some of the work that Nokia has done in software by bringing apps like ESPN and CNN to the platform is a good way to both differentiate the phones at time of sale, but also add value over time.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the CNN app? That was really new yesterday. We got to actually do a little video tour of it last time, which was kind of interesting. It has that cool iReport feature in it where users, I guess, can submit stuff. Can you just talk about a little bit how that process happened?
Yeah, so we have Nokia's got actually a pretty sizable, actually you refer to sort of a developer evangelism. There's a function of Nokia's past having been evangelizing platforms. So we have a lot of relationships with these really big media, information, and entertainment companies. And so what's happening is we're using those relationships to say, hey, let's bring that value near to Windows Phone. So there's a team that's been collaborating with CNN to say, hey, how can we bring the best of your assets into a really beautiful experience? And Metro's, it's so easy, to really make an engaging, interesting, beautiful experience. And then the iReporter thing was, the two teams just saying, hey, what about, hey, how about, and it's like, hey, here's an idea. What if we start capturing frames as soon as it starts, which in a way is a simple idea.
Yeah.
But in execution, it's like,
But it's a
Wow,
nice
that works
approach.
really nice.
Yeah. I mean, it really does sort of put this media control into people's hands, but it's also a unique experience that Nokia can offer. And as media becomes more personal these days with CNN and everything, people are able to submit their own reports. I thought it was a real interesting concept. Now, how does that actually work with the iReporter? Is it you can take photos and you can upload directly to CNN and file like a report?
Right. So this iReporter thing is essentially, they call it citizen journalism, and the idea is just anybody.
Yeah, anybody.
You see something, cool, and you upload it to CNN, and like, conceptually, it makes a lot of sense because, for big events, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Nigeria, Arab Spring, right? Those are the ones that they talk about where they got meaningful contributions. It's sort of
even disaster and disaster relief. It's huge these days.
Forget the news story that happened on the block.
Right. Yeah.
But when these big, your human events are occurring, they're humans, and they're out there, and some of them, are willing to actually tell the rest of the world what they're experiencing. And so the iReporter is just a mechanism to do that. And then CNN's got this army of editors that go through all this content that gets uploaded, and then a lot of it shows up in their broadcast media.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting approach, and because right now I think you would have to do it kind of manually. You have to save the photo, go to the website, and do all this.
Some email, and who knows if anybody will pay attention.
And now
this is very much a channel for that purpose.
Yeah. So I think that's, and plus with the excellent optics, obviously with the cameras on this, it seems like we'd be able to actually get really good photos submitted to CNN. So that's really good. Let's talk a little about LTE. So that's sort of the big thing with these phones. This is the first time we're seeing 4G, true 4G, I would say, United States on a Windows phone. The LTE now, we're familiar with LTE, of course, with the Android devices. Have had it for a while, but it's a double-edged sword there. They have it. I have friends that have it, and I always see them plugged in. Their phones are always charging. It's actually kind of a running joke in a lab I work. Everybody's phones are always connected. I'm like, that's not a cell phone anymore. But how did you guys, Nokia and Microsoft, sort of work at that problem? Because I know there's been some advancements since the first generation. But what are you guys doing in the software that really helps preserve battery? Because there's no, and correct me if I'm wrong, no switch to toggle the LTE, right? It's just going to, and I think appropriately, switch between them without user interference, which is the way it should be.
The general approach that we have, which works great collaborating with Nokia, is to identify the hardware spec. And as a difference from Android, we're not the guys that are broad on everything. The downside is that we're not going to be first usually, but the upside is when we pick something and do it, we're going to invest a lot in optimizing it. And so you take LTE right now, the chipset that the phones are built with has a separate radio. And that does present a bit of a battery challenge, but it's the kind of place that we have been able to work together. Here's a place where we have a single core processor that handles the user experience with all the great, smooth, no stuttering, high performance responsiveness that you expect, but it's going to take less battery. And so I think one thing that works well in our approach is to invest in optimization. When you get a Windows phone, you're getting a combination of hardware and software that was thoughtfully chosen, co-engineered between, in this case, Nokia and Microsoft, and really optimized. So we're optimistic that that experience that all those folks that are on Android phones are having in the lab will be quite a bit better on these Nokia Lumia 900s because of the investment in optimization.
You're doing a lot of the heavy lifting so that your user base doesn't have to.
That's right.
Very good stuff. I mean, yeah, LTE I think is going to be really big. I mean, one can actually argue the 3G HSPA Plus is actually doing pretty well right now with Windows Phone, and it's actually a pretty solid experience, mostly because the OS itself doesn't lag, and so it feels very smooth. But I think the LTE should be a pretty big selling point. So we're really excited to see, how well it performs and with the battery life. But I think, for our readers, that we're sort of taking a leap of faith, and I think it's a smart leap that the battery life actually will be good. Because I think, what you guys are saying, you kind of wait till the technology is appropriate. Now,
there's one other effect that's actually, I think, probably interesting to your readers as well, which is that the operators have a business need and objective to diversify the networks that their devices are on.
Right.
And so you take AT&T as an example, where they have they've had problems with the iPhone on their 3G network. And AT&T has a business interest in getting more great phones that are running on the LTE network. Okay. And when we meet their business interest, then they're motivated to promote the phones more.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that we hear from people is, I walked into a store and the sales reps weren't that forthcoming or promoting Windows phones. And in some situations, that's because the Windows Phone hasn't, in its technology or in the products so far, met the strategic desires of the operator. And here's a situation where
strategic and practical.
I think we're going to see AT&T. There will be a benefit to Windows Phone, and there, indirectly then to all our users, of the operator being behind it more because it meets what their strategic objectives.
Which is sort of a, you know, it's a roundabout indirect benefit to the consumer.
Right.
It's a virtuous cycle.
It's like, right, like you do this in a way, okay, lower latency, higher bandwidth. Well, shoot, Windows Phone performs so well to some extent, you know, you almost can't see it. You can. It's actually significantly better, but still, the point is you're getting a pretty good experience without it.
Yeah, and I'll
like
say it
Joe
because you
said,
can't. Maybe lower return rates, lower tech support calls.
Right. And then they promote it more.
Right, you
It's
get
in
more
consumers'
knowledgeable
hands.
sales reps who took the training instead of they didn't, and then they can help customers in the store better, and you know, it's a virtuous cycle.
Are we expecting a big push with AT&T? I know there's been, and I guess you can call them sort of rumors talking about AT&T is going to hero this device, which is sort of a new term for a lot of people. I'm not even sure how much of reality that is. But are you guys really expecting AT&T to give this a big push? Because we've been arguing for a long time that we need a carrier to really. AT&T's been exceptionally. I mean, they have the largest selection for Windows Phone, and that's actually a lot of our rangers get upset because only AT&T. But I mean, are you guys really expecting like AT&T to really kind of promote this phone and give it the attention it deserves? You know,
we really are. I mean, they're being super aggressive. You know, there's a reason that Ralph De La Vega was on
I was going to say that was a big
what,
sign.
Twice yesterday. So, you know, and you know, I'm backstage with those guys, and you know, they're high five in it.
Sure.
You know, we're going.
Okay.
I think AT&T's all in and super excited about the product. So I'm very optimistic.
Are we going to get some big dead mouse shows? Like
that?
That was very impressive. I actually downloaded and put on my Xbox and showed people. Look at
Seattle.
You want front row, right?
Well, I was going to say that because New York City. I'm right in New York City, so that'd be kind of convenient. But I mean, I think it's one thing.
Actually, what was funny about that was the big phone, the big ass phone in New York. He was telling me about it. I'm like, yeah, that's not very big.
You
made it look a lot smaller now.
That's true. It's definitely true. I think that's one thing, and you guys talk about this all the time with how your competition really, you don't view it as HTC and Samsung, but as more as, you know, the other operating systems, and how, and for our users, I know that's what the insights about having you guys on board is the advertising, word of mouth, and the visibility you bring to the operating system is really, it benefits everybody. So it's really nice. Plus, it's kind of gratifying to see these giant events take place. I think people really, you know, everyone who uses the operating system is really impressed with it. It's just getting it into
It's a bit of the rock star thing.
Yeah. So
it really is.
So I mean, hopefully we'll see a big push here in 2012. Just a few other questions. Okay, one more. Okay, sure. Mechanical shutters on Nokia phones for the cameras.
You know, we don't talk about products coming out.
Okay.
Try.
Okay, well, I'm just going to throw it out there while people are asking me about that.
Why'd you pick that one?
Yeah.
I'm just curious of all the, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just what I saw there. Yeah. Well, I won't ask about Tango because we probably won't get that one. And Impala.
You should ask why? Why would they want it? What would the benefit be?
Yeah, I don't. You know, there's some.
I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's. You know, people are looking for higher optics and stuff with the cameras, and we're getting better with the BIS sensors and backlit.
They want to ditch their carrying cameras.
One thing I talk about, this is just a little bit silly, but I say, you know, the lenses on our phones are getting sort of aren't good. It's like, where's my cover for the lens?
Right.
Like, I mean, like, it's a practical matter. If you don't want to scratch that piece of glass.
It's
such a nice camera.
Yeah. No, there's definitely obstacles.
So I'll ask you an easier question. So now that we're going into these multi-touch gesture interfaces, you have Tell Me. It's a very exciting year for mobile. It's like we're innovating all over again. How do you continue to provide that very consistent Metro interface with partners and with this whole new generation of interactions that are possible?
I think actually that Metro is a pretty flexible system at the core. Inside the team now, generally at Microsoft, we talk about Metro principles, and the principles you can apply to lots and lots of different UIs. Like one of the Metro principles has been clean, light, and fast. Another has been about delightful use of topography to communicate ideas. And these principles are broadly applicable to lots and lots of different UIs. because actually one of the principles is content, not crumb. Because Metro tries to focus on what is the actual subject matter that is the user's real thing of interest, it's a great fit for things like a speech interface where
you get out of the way.
Don't want to, yeah, exactly. You want to be out of the way. So I think actually, I'll give our design team, there's some terrific people on our design team that have worked collaboratively on this for a long time. I'll give them a lot of credit for having some very good future-oriented thinking when they made the decision about those principles, and I think we're starting to see the benefit of that as it crosses over into more and more products.
Because you don't have to sort of re-engineer again, you're ready for the future.
That's right, it's robust.
Yep.
So there you go.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.